One thing I do know by reading the comments yesterday is that Keenan Yildiz is a player that you would all love to sign. He was heavily linked yesterday, still is today. He played in a friendly yesterday for Juventus. They lost 2-1 against Inter. And he's still being talked about everywhere, linking him with a move to Arsenal. Many journalists are saying that Juventus would accept around about £120 million for him. Although when you read what some of the Italian journalists are saying, they're saying he's not for sale at any price, untouchable. No bids yet, but remember, there's still a couple of weeks ago of this transfer window. Anything can happen. Any big bid could go in and change things. And that's similar with Bradley Barcola. Bradley Barcola wants to leave PSG, has not signed a new contract. They're willing to sell him, but they slapped this 130 to 140 million price tag on him. Nobody wants to pay that. They think it's too high. Liverpool were willing to bid around about 105 million pounds for him. That's the highest they're going to go. Arsenal is said to be willing to pay 90 to 95 million for him, which I actually think is probably his value in this current market. But PSG holding out for this fee. Now, he wants to leave. Where is he going to end up? Liverpool's still the favourites, but could Arsenal come in with a big bid before the end of the window? He's a left winger. He's a 2 times Champions League winner. He's a France international. He is a quality player. He's lightning quick. He's as quick as he gets. Could Arsenal, this one's going to be interesting to see whether it's going to be Liverpool, whether Arsenal come in with a late bid. It's a couple of weeks ago before the end of the window. It's going to be very interesting with players like this that are being linked with a move to Arsenal.
That because Arsenal didn't get Vinny Jr., they could suddenly move for Barcola. And if Arsenal pay the asking price, then Barcola might change his preference, which at the moment is to join Liverpool. But so far, Liverpool feel in control of the negotiation, but they're not going to bid as long as PSG maintain that 170 million number. But if Torres arrives, I suspect that that number might come down by 20 or 30 million euros. Liverpool's starting point is more around the 100 million euros mark. And again, that could come up by 10 or 15 million euros. And as a result, this big gulf in valuation, as it appears now, might not be the case as the month of August progresses, which is why I think that Liverpool will still hold some optimism that Barcola is possible.
Hi there. Christian Romero, there are a few stories around that he wouldn't mind moving to Arsenal, probably because Bruno's just joined, so he probably wants to join him. But I don't think they'd be very pleased about transferring somebody from Spurs to Arsenal.
Yeah, there's a lot of Romero links at the moment because the player will leave and Tottenham don't want to sell to Arsenal. Surprise, surprise. It doesn't look like we're going to get a repeat of the Sol Campbell situation unless there's some kind of hidden clause that we don't know about that takes it out of Tottenham's control. But as long as it's a kind of normal transfer negotiation, the perspective of Spurs is they will not sell to Arsenal. Romero would be interested if Arsenal came calling, and Arsenal have genuinely discussed this, so it's not a story that's come out of nowhere, but they've not really made an approach yet at the time we're live anyway to the player side or to Tottenham Hotspur. Then you have a very interesting story developing with Atletico Madrid because they wanted Romero a year ago, and he said in a public interview that he wanted to move to La Liga, and Napoli have already agreed a deal with Spurs for 40 million euros, but not terms with Romero. So we know what the number is, 40 million euros at least for a side outside of the Premier League. And if Atleti match that number, then there's a fair chance this deal happens. But they want to be relatively quick because Barcelona are still potentially looking for a centre-back, and Ronald Araujo is on his way as I speak to Liverpool to undergo his medical. So there might be more clubs coming forwards at the last minute for Christian Romero. But Atletico Madrid are leading the race at the moment because Romero would also want that move. And let's see whether Arsenal try and do something crazy. At the moment, like I say, all we can say is they've discussed it internally.
What's going to happen with Christian Romero, the captain of Spurs, or he was the captain of Spurs until he threw his toys out of the Prem last season? Spurs want to move him on. They brought in their centre-backs, Van Heck from Brighton, and they brought in Senesi. He's, no longer needed there. And, this one's very interesting because all the reports is that although Atletico Madrid are pushing really, really hard to sign him, They're trying to sign him for around about £34 million. I've seen that they've put a bid in and even agreed personal terms. Where he would really like to come to, according to all the reports, is Arsenal. He's pushing to sign for Arsenal over Atletico Madrid. The big problem for Arsenal, and they're interested, because remember, he's got that connection with Gabriel Heinze, fellow Argentinian who's, assistant at Arsenal. And, Arsenal, we know, are looking for a right-sided centre-back. But the Spurs hierarchy are refusing to sell him to Arsenal. They're saying, no. They're refusing to sell him to Arsenal. I wonder what would happen if he turns around and says, I don't want to go to Atletico. I only want to go to Arsenal. And Arsenal came in with a higher bid than the 34 million. What situation would Spurs just hold out and end up keeping him? That would be one to consider. What do you guys think? I asked it the other day, and most of you said no. No, you don't want him. Maybe I'm in the camp of listen, I don't think we will get him, but maybe I'm in the camp of minority, because I actually think, I've said it before, that Mikel Arteta would make him a better defender.
The World Cup, Marcus Rashford. Why isn't there more links between him and some of these clubs, like an Arsenal, Spurs, arguably?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think the answer is twofold. One, wage, and two, Rashford's own desire to see whether he can be reintegrated at Manchester United. There was a clause, £40 million, which expired, which was available to everybody except Manchester City or Liverpool. And prior to that, there was the €30 million option to buy. And Barcelona, of course, didn't take it. So Manchester United's valuation will be informed by those two numbers, even though neither clause is active. The challenge is Marcus Rashford, whose wage, like many at Manchester United that have these kind of legacy contracts, has gone up by 25% because Manchester United have got Champions League football. So if you match Rashford's wage now, then you're looking at paying about $325,000 a week. And given his age and given the player's appetite to wait and see how things go now at Manchester United, there's just a very small pool of suitors. Manchester United had held talks with PSG 2 windows ago, but they're looking at other attackers, as I've just mentioned. Arsenal, I sense, will have other names in mind unless the Rashford wage goes down. Manchester United don't have an appetite to do what Chelsea did at the last minute with Raheem Sterling. He had a massive wage. Arsenal got a great deal there, but it was a loan. So everything has kind of come to a halt because Rashford will return and ultimately know that Man United are not going to add a left winger unless Rashford goes. So he'll have the opportunity to maybe get a lot of minutes as well. Turkey and Saudi Arabia are the only places as of now that would pay Rashford the wage that would match his Manchester United equivalent, and he hasn't shown a desire to go to either.